This title card is significant because it tells audiences what they're about to see. And audiences at that time expected to see cartoons that were funny, not serious. And this is about as serious as you can get.
Yep, based on Edgar Allan Poe's The Telltale Heart.
And narrated by James Mason, who was then a major Hollywood star, having come here from England just a few years earlier. 1 year later, he'd be at the Walt Disney Studio starring in 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. But here we have a Salvador Dali-esque landscape to introduce this film and, again, let you know you're in for something unusual. They're using a piece of modern art to introduce the main title.
Can you imagine those titles in 3D?
Yeah, I know there's some conflicting evidence as to whether this was actually made in 3D or planned to be made in 3D. Either way, it was not released in 3D because 1953 was the great year of 3D in Hollywood.
True.
Yeah, that's kind of one of the holy grails of film collecting. People think there's a 3D print out there, but T. Basusto, who's the son of Stephen Basusto, the producer, he was 10 years old when this came out, and he was hung around the studio, and he recalls seeing it in 3D at the studio, but beyond that, no one else has.
An old man.
Now, again, you know, the look of the film is
He had never harmed.
designed specifically for this story. This isn't the right look for a Mr. Magoo cartoon or a Gerald McBoing Boing. Each film they made had its own individual look, and this is so revolutionary, just so unlike anything anybody had done here or abroad in the early 50s.
The eye.
This film has the least animation, I think, of any Hollywood cartoon short as well.
Yes, because it's all transitions, isn't it?
Right. There's little bits of animation in the film that are done by Pat Matthews, but like here's the shadow against the floor. I mean, that kind of thing. But mainly it's these paintings and panning in, panning out, and camera moves, and just atmospheric and amazing.
And a lot of this is the work of the color stylist and designer Paul Julian. I mean, just think, a decade earlier, he was at Warner Brothers working on, you know, Bugs Bunny and Daffy Duck cartoons with Chuck Jones. But even then, he was pushing those boundaries.
Yeah.
And the film is directed by Ted Parmalee, who had a long history in animation too, and like so many UPA people, was a Disney veteran. He was there during the great time of Pinocchio and the other masterpieces of Disney's early feature film production. But in the 50s, he wrote an article for an industry magazine where he talked about the history of animation and how it got stilted or stunted at a certain point. He said, the progress in this period was quite remarkable, about the equivalent of the trip from painting mastodons on cave walls to the painting of angels on the walls of churches, all accomplished in the space of about 10 years and with about the same result. And he adds, once the big problems had been solved, creative boredom set in.
What?
And that's what led him to UPA, to be free of that boredom, to get out of the rut of doing routine, repetitive animated cartoons. And it's a shame, actually, that once UPA reached this great height, this great zenith of originality with films like The Telltale Heart, was just when commercial pressures were placed on them to stop doing these and to do Magoo cartoons.
Right.
And there's nothing wrong with Mr. Magoo. Those are wonderful cartoons too. But it was what they were trying to get away from.
Right. This is sort of the creative height right here. This was a hard sell, this film. They did go out and market it special, but I was told that there was some advanced screenings where test audiences laughed because they didn't know how to watch a cartoon and not laugh. Except for maybe the Fleischer Superman cartoons, I can't think of too many shorts that weren't gag or fairy tale related, you know? And this is definitely going and pushing the envelope, going in a new direction.
They even, again, cast, if you want to use the word cast, an unusual composer, a man named Boris Kremenliev. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. He was a Bulgarian-born American composer, and this is virtually his only film score. I could only find a documentary credit for him the same year.
It was over.
But they didn't want routine music, just as they didn't want routine visuals.
The eye.
It was one more thing that set the UPA cartoons apart.
I was.
You know who's a great fan of this cartoon is the wonderful director and writer Guillermo del Toro. You can see why he would admire it.
It's ironic that the film was nominated for an Academy Award, but it lost to Disney's Toot Whistle Plunk and Boom. Ironic because Disney was adopting the UPA sensibility with that film in particular.
Yes, well, that was Ward Kimball at Disney, who was, some people thought, the most revolutionary animation person at Disney at that time. Somebody willing to take dares and try new things, which he did with Toot Whistle Plunk and Boom, and which is a very modern-looking Disney cartoon that probably wouldn't have existed had it not been for UPA coming along just when it did.
You'll want to look through the house.
Look at these. I mean, these images are just so striking, so unusual, and so un-cartoon-like, which was exactly what they wanted them to be.
The old man?
They're cerebral. You know, it's just basically communicating to you through visuals what the characters are thinking, what, in this case, the madman, how he is interpreting the world.
Right.
Yeah, his cupboard.
And of course, you couldn't ask for a better interpreter vocally than James Mason. He's just the ideal choice to narrate this cartoon.
Stay, please.
And the fact that he would do it, I think, was a mark of UPA's stature in the field. I'm not sure that he would have been so happy to make a guest appearance in a Heckle and Jekyll cartoon in 1953. But UPA by this time had been lauded by, every newspaper, every magazine, every critic that was working at the time. They had reached a pinnacle of success. If you want to read more about UPA, you certainly want to turn to Adam Abraham's book on the studio and also Amita Miti's Cartoon Modern. Those are two books that really give the studio its full due.
They must hear it.
I have a chapter in my book of Mice and Magic, too, but that would be unseemly for me to promote that here on this commentary track.
Letting it beat so that I stop it!
And again, the restoration work that Sony has done on these cartoons makes them look the way they're supposed to look.
Especially a dark cartoon like this, where, it gets so muddy and in inferior earlier releases of this film. Here you can see the colors. I didn't even know there were colors in some of these scenes. It just seems so dark and gray, but there are some beautiful, beautiful color work here.
And again, the kind of combinations of colors that you would not see in any conventional Hollywood cartoon. Well, I think we've made our point. It's a great, great short.